Hi, my name is Mike Seacott-Shear. I've been a tent designer in the outdoor industry for 29 years. I have, as of this filming, worked on 245 tents. You can see my resume in the links below. I'm the man behind the Tent Lab, and today we're offering our second Kickstarter project. The first, Deuce of Spades, did very well early this year. These tents are called the RugRats. They're the first in what I hope will be a long line of Kickstarter experimental tents from the Tent Lab. They're experimental, not in the sense that they might not work, not at all. They're experimental in that they have dozens of new features and some radical new materials. Why would I do that? Aren't there lots of new features and materials coming out all the time? Well, no, not really. It turns out that it's very hard for a product manager to introduce a new feature or material that the customer doesn't ask for. And if the customer doesn't know about it, they can't ask for it. So it's very simple. As a product designer, I want to drive innovation in the outdoor industry, and this is one of my ways of trying to do just that. The RugRat's new features are primarily along the lines of strength, convenience, and reliability. Reliability in the sense that you can take a RugRat out and there's really no such thing as a stormed out trip anymore. Probably the easiest way to follow the logic of the tents is to know where they came from. So here's how they started. My wife and I took our toddler backpacking last year. We took a very nice ultralight tent with us, 3 pounds, 3-person tent. And what a surprise! We found ourselves actually wanting a tent that was very different from the one we'd brought. The priorities that had gone into shaping that tent just weren't quite aligned with what we were doing. What no one had mentioned before was that toddlers and infants make terrible tent mates. They're like little windmills that thrash, flop, kick, and snore. So if you can't get them far enough away from you, you don't get any sleep at all.
Hey, what's the one thing that young parents need more of?
Oh my God, sleep.
The other thing was that our son really didn't like the tent at all. You could tell every time we had to leave him in it, like when one of us went to go get water or something, that he thought he was being punished.
Here's how we address our 2 problems. First problem, thrashing tent mate. Second problem, no fun. Genius answer, we need more room. So let's give it a bigger floor and steeper walls. And let's put a blue dot in to make sure we remember to make everything as light as possible. The tent we used was an ultralight, so it was definitely a squeeze 3 floor plan. And it definitely was low slung. It was 3 pounds after all. For the RugRat 4, we're going to start with a nice big 8-foot by 8-foot floor. To get steep walls, we need to put a pole above each one to hold it up. We'd also like the tent to shed rain and snow well, so we'll put a horizontal bar crosswise up high and tilt the side poles a little. Now we'll connect these poles to the floor using as little material as possible. And finally, we make everything round and smooth. Voila, the pole structure of the RugRats. And here's how it looks all catted up. Whew! Well, that looks like about it. I've still got time to nip down to the pub for a pint. Alas, it was not to be. I'm a tent designer, and I think way too much about this stuff. So it occurred to me that really the bigger issues were getting sleep and enjoyment and ways a tent might be able to help that.
Sleep.
Sleep and enjoyment. Well, I better check the comparison chart to see how I can make that better for the tent. It doesn't seem to be here. Well, oddly enough, at least on the fun end of the enjoyment scale, we don't seem to be having too many problems figuring out what to do there. And frankly, it's not something we can really educate you on or really sway your opinion in any way. You either like the look or you don't. But when it comes to sleep and enjoyment, we have a clean slate and a lot of explaining to do. So let's dive right in. To make a tent which helps you sleep, we can make it quiet and we can make it worry-free. For enjoyment, we can make a tent that lets you see out. We can make a tent strong enough to be used in more exposed, more spectacular sites, and we can make it easier to use. And of course, to make a tent quiet, we have to make it strong. So there's our first overlap. Under worry-free and easy to use, obviously we can make the tent convenient, and we can put enough features in it so that you can literally set it and forget it. And to make a tent strong, we use the new DAC PL 13.55mm poles in our I-pole architecture like you saw. Then we test it in a wind tunnel to make sure we did right. And we rig it so that great anchors are really easy to do. We can also color code the poles for setup. We can pre-rig all your guy lines. And we use some new hardware to make everything easier. Last but not least, we use polyester fabrics because they're the only ones you can set the tent up with and have them get wet and not sag or change in any important way. Two of the biggest features of the tent, two of the most expensive ones anyway, are the poles and the fabric. And both of these are really unusual. The poles are the new DAC PL 13.55. It's a project that the owner, Jake Law, has been working on for 2, maybe 3 years now, and these poles are fantastic. What's great about them is they're stiffer and stronger than a normal high-strength pole, like an 11mm, but they weigh less. So they're exactly what you want for this kind of tent. Nice and quiet, nice and strong. There's more info about that down below. The other feature, the polyester, is actually in large part being driven by the size of the tent and the set it, forget it mentality that we're insisting on for this tent. When a fabric gets wet, if it's a nylon fabric, it can grow 3%. That's 3% expansion. That's not stretch. Stretch is more on top of that if you're pulling on it. Whereas polyester fabrics essentially have no expansion at all. So they look exactly the same and act exactly the same, wet or dry. So we have a whole bunch of information on that down below. Some shocking footage showing you exactly what happens when you take a tent that's made out of nylon fabrics, even the modern Silpiu ones, and you get them wet. Those of you that are experienced campers have noticed this. Your tents are changing in dimension. It's not just your setup job getting funky when the tent gets wet. Those fabrics, the 20 denier polyesters we're using, cost about double what a similar weight nylon would, and they're not available in ultra light like the nylons are. So it puts us in a funny place, price and weight wise. So we can't get it quite as ultralight as we might like because we can't get the fabric. On the other hand, we can't use nylon because the dimensional change is just too much on a tent of this size. The RugRat is the right tool for the job for camping out in the more exposed, more spectacular campsites. And if you're inside, it's got enough windows so you know when the heck to get out of there and take a look. And that's really what we want you to do. We want you to get out and enjoy nature. Have a great time. Go see it. Bring your kids. Enjoy.
Let's talk about the money. The Kickstarter goal is a high one, no question. It's driven entirely by the factory minimum of 300 tents. The factory needs to make 300 tents to make any tents like this. So we need 300 backers, spending roughly $600. It's a huge, high goal. I've laid out exactly where your money goes to towards the bottom of the page. I think you'll find it's a new level of transparency. Certainly I've never seen anything like it before. You're dealing with me, Kickstarter, and the factories. That's it. These tents truly are an incredible bargain. The last thing I wanted to mention is we really need your help. These are expensive tents and we need 300 backers. So if you like the tent, if you like the reasoning, if you like the presentation, if you like the thinking, please consider hitting the Facebook share button at the bottom of the video here. Maybe posting on a forum if you think it's appropriate. We really need your help getting this tent in front of the people who it might be right for. Thanks.